It is going to be a tough slate for tonight because it's kind of tough to find hitters that we want to use. Some stacks are tough for today. The pitchers, those are easy. We've got like 5 different guys you could easily justify pitchers. So the pitchers, no sweat. We can talk about those for sure. But I think the bigger topic of discussion today is going to be trying to find hitters we can tolerate, some stacks we want to use. So feel free to jump on in. Let's get this party started. Welcome on into our FanDuel Fantasy Q&A right here on the FanDuel Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch pages. My name is Jim Sadas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to answer your questions around tonight's MLB DFS slate for the next 25 minutes in the run-up to tonight's slate. And like I said, pitcher, not that hard tonight. We got Shane Bieber facing the Pirates, Sonny Gray facing the Cardinals, 2 elite-level pitchers in awesome matchups. So definitely going there. Clayton Kershaw against the Mariners, you can go there. Dinelson Lamet is facing the Rangers. Like, all 4 of these dudes are awesome. So pitching, very easy. Hitters, not as much. So let's dive into the questions here over on YouTube. As a reminder, we are monitoring questions from YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. So no matter where you are watching this stream, you can hit us up, ask us a question, and I'll answer them here live on this stream. Alvin, do you like the Dodgers or Cleveland as stacks? Okay, let's pull up here. Oops, that's the wrong day. Should probably pull up this one instead. Okay, the Dodgers are facing Yusei Kikuchi. He's been better this year. The velocity's been up for Kikuchi. The results still aren't good, but he's limiting hard contact this year, getting more strikeouts. I think because the Dodgers are the Dodgers, you could justify it, Alvin, because they're really good and it's a tough slate, but they're not near the top of my list. They were not in my top 6 stacks for today, so I'm going to be pretty low on them. Cleveland is facing Trevor Williams. Another guy who limits hard contact really well. The one thing that works in Cleveland's favor is that Williams does not get a lot of strikeouts. I've liked what I've seen from Trevor Williams this year, and he pitched pretty well his last time out. So I'm probably lower on Cleveland and the Dodgers, but I think that you can potentially consider going there. So I'm not personally going there, but I understand the process that led you there. Chris, does Jim ever use DK salary to find value or underpriced players? I don't even know what DK is. I don't know what you're talking about. Donkey Kong? I don't know. What could that possibly be? I think that's a good method, Chris, if I'm going to answer your answer straight up. It is a good method for trying to find players who may be a bit underpriced. So leading you there can be an effective method, I think, especially a pitcher. The one pushback I would have there is that for my main focus is that for hitters, revolve entirely around stacks. So to me, it doesn't matter too much if a player is quote unquote undersalaried, because I just need them to fit in the right situations. That can be a bit narrow-minded, and it can sometimes lead to me overlooking potential good one-offs in good situations who may have salaries lower than they should be. So there's a lot of credence to the question you're asking. I just don't do so personally because my focus is so centered around trying to identify proper stacks. How do you feel about a Marlins stack with Lugo now being in the rotation? So that game is not on the main slate on FanDuel. I believe that's a 6-10 game. So that's not on the main slate, I believe. Let's take a look at Lugo's numbers here, just because maybe you're playing a different slate, potentially going there. We're focusing mainly on the main slate, but, we're here. Why not? Let's talk about it. So Seth Lugo tends to be a pretty big ground ball guy, I believe. If we're pulling this up. No, I guess he actually doesn't get a ton of ground balls. I would probably still be lower on it personally, just because I would expect Lugo to be decent, especially as he gets stretched out. But, I haven't researched it that much because he's not on the main slate. So that is a non-research-based answer to your question. Bryce, why does FanDuel say that Kevin Gausman is the top pitching option? I'm very confused. I went with Bieber, but why did just FanDuel say that, or is Gausman an under-the-radar option? I'm not sure what you're saying by FanDuel is saying that. So if you want to clarify, Bryce, Chris, I was joking. I know what you meant by DK. I was being stupid because of this. But Bryce, I'm not sure what you mean about FanDuel saying that Kevin Gausman is a top option. Maybe you're talking about like Guru. Let's pull up Guru here and see what they say. This pulls from numberFire. So if Guru says that Kevin Gausman is a great pitcher, that would mean that numberFire says so. Not there either. So I guess I'm not actually sure where you got FanDuel saying that from. I like Kevin Gausman personally. The reason that I like Kevin Gausman, actually I just had his page pulled up here, is that he's throwing what's being classified as a changeup more often this year. And it's weird because if you go to Baseball Savant, it's not classified as being a changeup. So I think that it kind of depends on where you look, but he's throwing whatever pitch it is, he's throwing it more often this year, and it's been really effective. At 32% strikeout rate with a 5% walk rate, he's still allowing hard contact, and he's not getting ground balls. So, there's still going to be situations where Gausman gets pounded, but he's pretty cheap. He's facing, a good Angels team, but he's $7,700. So actually, Bryce, I'm not sure where it said that FanDuel said that Gausman was a top pitching option, but I do like him personally, and I think that he is the best pitcher below $9,000 for tonight. So Kevin Gausman is someone I will be using for tonight and my favorite value pitcher. Mateo, 2 questions. What do you think of the lineup facing Kershaw, and what do you think of the bats in Oakland versus Arizona? So Kershaw is facing the Mariners. They are not a good offense. They strike out quite a bit against lefties. A 24% strikeout rate. You see the 101 WRC plus there. I think that is a very misleading number because it is a smaller sample. A lot of the guys on in their roster weren't there last year and thus are not included in that number because this does go from 2019 to 2020. So I think that the lineup that he's facing, the matchup for Kershaw is better than the sheet would indicate. The reason that I'm not as high on Kershaw as I am on Bieber and Gray is that his strikeout rate, while being very good, is not on par with theirs. So I have Shane Bieber and Sonny Gray ahead of Clayton Kershaw for tonight. I think that Kershaw is a good option, and if Kershaw is your favorite guy, I think that you can definitely go there for sure. But for me personally, I have him below Gray and below Bieber, so he's not my top 2 for tonight, but I think that he's definitely solid. What do you think of the bats in Oakland against Arizona? I mentioned them as being a potential place you could go for tonight. Facing Alex Young. Young started this year in the bullpen, getting stretched out and working his way up. And he's kind of a ground ball guy, but not a huge strikeout guy, so I think you can definitely stack against him. Mark Canha is $2,700. I'd assume he'll bat 4th or 5th tonight. I think that he's a great play. So, Mateo, I am on board with using Oakland for tonight. Yevgeny, do you like a red stack? The Reds are facing Adam Wainwright. Yes, I think that the Reds are my number 2 stack for tonight behind the Boston Red Sox. And let's take a look at their lineup here. I clicked away for some reason. Okay, I think that Mike Moustakas batting 5th, always going to be a great option. You do want to favor the lefties against Adam Wainwright because he does have decent platoon splits. So Votto, Winker, Moustakas, Akiyama. I think that Josh Van Meter, although having putrid results so far this year, is a good value option at $2,100. You can make affording Shane Bieber a whole heck of a lot easier. So I would say focus on the lefties in this Reds lineup. They're actually 2 righties, so they apparently are aware of the fact that you want to target lefties against Wainwright. But I think that you could still go at Castellanos and Suarez because they're good. Suarez has struggled a lot this year, but he's a good hitter. You could go there, but I would say prioritize the lefties there. Yevgeny, I am very in on a red stack. Where does Lamet rank in your pitching rankings? So he is in a good spot because he's facing the Rangers, and the Rangers love to strike out, 25% strikeout rate versus righties. The reason I am lower on Lamet than I am on Bieber and Gray is that the pitch counts haven't been as high, 80, 91, 84, 83, 81. So that's going to put him below Clayton Kershaw for me as well. So Lamet's going to be at least 4th. I could make the case to put Gausman ahead of Lamet. I think I will put Lamet higher just because he's in a higher strikeout matchup. So I would say Lamet is my number 4 pitcher for tonight behind Bieber, Gray, Kershaw. But it's just the pitch count. That's my only concern with Lamet. It's a pitch count. If he gets that pitch count up, I will buy in more fully, but not quite there yet. Bryce, it was in the orange tab when you click on their name while editing lineups, and you click his and pull up his recent game news. Okay. So I think you're talking about the player news, which comes from Roto Grinders, I believe. So let's go here. Okay, so we go to Gausman, click on him, wait for it to load because my computer is slow. Yeah, top pitcher on the slate. Okay, so not the most expansive analysis. I think that usually gets filled in later on. It might not be, though. So this is from Roto Grinders. Roto Grinders is full of a lot of very sharp people. So if Roto Grinders is saying that Kevin Gausman is a good option, I would believe them in general. I also happen to believe the exact same thing as them for tonight. So Bryce, to help clarify, this is news from Roto Grinders, with usually has more analysis on the player. So again, Roto Grinders, good resource for daily fantasy stuff. If they like Gausman, I think that should help our view of him. I happen to like him as well. So that's what that means. Hopefully that helps clear things up there, Bryce. And sorry that I didn't grasp what you're saying earlier. DJ, should I spend my money on the Beeb or Sonny Gray? The answer is yes. You should use your salary on both. I think that they're both great, and they're both my number 1 and number 2 options. The tiebreaker for me, because I think that they're both super close. The tiebreaker for me is that Shane Bieber walks fewer guys than Sonny Gray, which allows him to pitch deeper into games. Shane Bieber's gone 7 or more innings 3 times this year, and Gray has not done so since August 4th of last year. So I prefer Shane Bieber over Sonny Gray for tonight. So I think that's the way I'll be leaning there. I think that they're both number 1 and number 2, and they're in the same tier to me. So if you have a strong inclination towards Sonny Gray, like you're super out on the Cardinals lineup, then I would say go Sonny Gray. Personal preferences for Bieber, but I like both. And if I'm multi-entering for tournaments, I'm going to get a lot of both in there for sure. They will be the core of my pitching selections. Over on Twitch from Justin, what do you think about the Baltimore or a Brewers stack? I considered Baltimore in the show today. The reason I didn't wind up going with them is because I'm not enthused with like the power in that team. They avoid strikeouts pretty well, but they don't flash a ton of power. So that was the reason that I wound up being a little bit lower on them. I mean, you do see some guys with really good numbers so far this year from a batted ball perspective. Maybe I'm underrating the power of this Orioles lineup, but Nathan Eovaldi hasn't been too bad this year. 3.95 skill interactive ERA. Doesn't get a ton of strikeouts and does let us some hard contact. So I think you can definitely like justify going at the Orioles. They're not high on my list, but I don't think it's a bad idea. The Brewer stack was my number 3 stack this morning because Jose Berrios has really been struggling this year. The Brewers have too, so there's that as well. Berrios, for whatever reason, is walking a lot of guys. He's setting up a lot of hard contact, still not getting ground balls, and that's concerning. I did read a piece from Eno Saris of The Athletic today. Hopefully I'm saying his last name right. But I did read a piece today talking about how he thought that Berrios would bounce back pretty quickly. So he was looking to potentially buy low on Berrios. And I think that Eno is one of the best pitching minds when it comes to analyzing pitchers and what they're doing. And if he says that Berrios is going to rebound, I believe that Berrios is going to rebound. So I'm a little bit lower on the Brewers than I was previously just because I respect Eno's opinion a lot. So to me, I'm not as high on the Brewers now as I was this morning after having read that piece, but I think there is still a lot of justification to stacking them because Berrios, 5.01 skill interactive ERA this year, 12% walk rate, a lot of hard contact. So yeah, I think, Justin, I am okay with a Brewer stack here. There's still a decent stack in my eyes. They may not be at the top end of my list, but they're definitely in the consideration for me. Alvin, do you pay attention to what the opposing teams are doing recently when deciding a pitcher? Yes, specifically strikeouts. And that's why I've had to kind of recheck a lot of things so far this year because the Orioles are a team that they're just not striking out all that much. The Brewers are striking out a lot. So I would say, Alvin, dig into recent sample strikeout rates. And if a team recently has been striking out a ton and you don't think it's because of the pitchers they have faced, that is a situation where you want to dive in because strikeouts are so important. The team-wide strikeout rates, super important too. So I think for me, if I'm looking at just one statistic and trying to decide how I want to view an opposing lineup in a smaller sample, strikeout rate will be that way. If they're scoring a lot of runs, this kind of got me like this kind of has led me astray a couple of times this year. Like I ignored the fact that the Padres were killing baseballs, and I was like, okay, they strike out a lot. I can still use pitchers facing them, and that bit me, and that was a mistake. So maybe it's better to put more stock in the runs they've scored recently and consider that more. Maybe that's something I need to reinvestigate in my own process because, again, I did use pitchers facing the Padres. It did not work out. Maybe I should have put more weight on what they were doing recently and potentially looking beyond just a strikeout rate. But for me personally, the main focus is looking at that strikeout rate. And if they're striking out a lot, I find that super intriguing. It's something that I do want to target. So yes, I do pay attention to what teams are doing when trying to decide on the pitcher. Bryce, yes, it does clear it up. And thank you. You are welcome, Bryce. Yeah, so whenever you see like a news thing, again, Roto Grinders is a source I would trust. I'm assuming that there's probably one on Shane Bieber here too, if it pulls up, because again, my computer is super slow. Yeah, so here you see the full analysis. Like this is the type of analysis they bring. So that's stuff that you want to value for sure. So I definitely think that that is a good thing for sure. Michael, Red Sox, should I stack? Okay, so which Red Sox should I stack within a Red Sox stack? Let's see if their lineup is out here. I think JD Martinez was supposed to be good to go. Yeah, he is. Okay, so JD Martinez back in the lineup for today. Alex Verdugo and Rafael Devers are two guys who have low salaries. Verdugo is $2,700. Devers is $2,800. Both those guys actually have good results so far this year, but their salaries are low. I know Devers his numbers are good because he's gone nuts like the past week or whatever it is. But overall, the number's still good. So I would say Devers and Verdugo are the two guys you start with. I think this is a good time to buy low on Martinez and Bogarts as well. JD Martinez, I know he got banged up, but it sounds like he should be okay. Or I guess not banged up. He was dehydrated. But regardless, I'd expect him to be okay. He's back in there now. He's been striking out more than usual so far this year, and that is definitely a concern. But he's still hitting the ball hard. Let's pull up the numbers for the Red Sox in 2020, just so I can show you this year with Martinez and Bogarts, because they're striking out more than usual, which is a concern because it means they may not be seeing the ball all that well. But when they make contact, they're still making good contact. I'm going to sort here. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Bogarts, 58% hard hit rate against righties with a 42% fly ball rate. Martinez is at a 42% hard hit rate and a 42% fly ball rate. Those guys are $3,500 and $3,400 over on FanDuel. So I think the Red Sox are a really good stack. So honestly, Michael, I think you could stick with the top of the order here. It depends, I guess, on where you're going a pitcher because it may be tougher to go with strictly the top of the order if you're going with someone like Shane Bieber. But I think if we're just looking at these batters straight up, that's where I would be looking first. Let's see if we can find any value out of Pilar or Christian Vasquez. Looking at their numbers this year, Vasquez hasn't quite carried over the same power that he showed last year. A bit disappointing there. Pilar, not a huge power guy either, but he's hitting the ball decently hard, not getting as much loft as you'd hope. I think that if we're picking beyond Verdugo and Devers, I would probably lean towards Pilar over Vasquez as far as being the next guy. But I do think that you can stack the Red Sox decently easy. So let's try to do this here, actually, while we add this up. Okay, so we got Bieber. That leaves us with $2,875. Whew, that is tight. Okay, so we go Verdugo. Let's go with Devers as our next guy. So if we go with those two, we're at a little bit over 28 left. And then if we plug in Pilar, so that would give us two outfielders already, which makes it harder for Martinez, but I still think that you can justify it. Yeah, I think that you can fit those guys in there. It does force you to scramble a bit with the rest of your lineup from a hitting perspective, but it's still okay. Question from Tim over on Facebook. Thoughts on a Red Sox-Orioles game stack? So I think the one situation where you can game stack in baseball is in a good park, in a good situation for hitting. And normally that's not something that you're going to find all that often, but I kind of think that you do get it tonight because if you look at the park factors on this slate, none of them are all that high, like just a couple of ticks above average. One of the ones that is above average is that Orioles-Red Sox game. The temperature there is not as high as you would hope, but it's still high enough. It's not super low, I guess. So I honestly think that's not a terrible idea on a slate where there are a lot of bad park factors. Stack the parks that are better for hitting. The other one's good for hitting is Target Field here in Minneapolis for the Twins and the Brewers, as that one is also above average. All the other parks pretty below average. So honestly, Tim, it's not something I do all that often, is game stacking a baseball game. I game stack for literally every lineup in NFL. But for baseball, it's not something I do all that often. But I honestly do think that it's a pretty sharp thing to do for tonight. So I don't hate it. Between these two games in better parks, I would definitely prefer the Red Sox game against the Orioles because I respect Brandon Woodruff a lot. He is on the road, and his strikeout rate does go down on the road. He's had some bumpy games on the road so far this year. And the Twins are good, but I still respect Brandon Woodruff a lot. So I'd probably be more inclined to stack the Red Sox versus the Orioles. But hey, I think that honestly on this slate, Tim, that's a pretty good way to go just because there aren't a lot of good parks. So take advantage of one of the few good parks that there are. So honestly, Tim, I think that's a smart way to play things. I am on board with that. Justin on Twitch, one more question if you get to it. I need a one-off utility spot with $3,200 left. Who would you recommend? So that cancels out JD Martinez and Xander Bogaerts. So let's go over here to utility and pull up, scroll down to $3,200. Okay. All right, so we have Rosario. No, he's facing Woodruff. Renato Nunez. That could work. I don't mind Ramon Laureano. He's facing Young, who is a lefty. That's an advantage for Laureano. I think Marcus Semien is $2,900 or $2,800. I could consider that as well. Kyle Lewis is facing Kershaw. That's tough. So I think – as long as you aren't up against the cap on Reds – give me Mike Moustakas at $3,000. He's second base eligible, which is sweet because second base has been my nightmare zone this entire season. So he fills second base, $3,000. We'll leave a little bit of salary on the table, but honestly, $200, like, who cares? I would say that Moustakas would be my number one option there. The number two option was, I guess Votto is in there too, but Laureano, I think. So Laureano and then Votto and Moustakas going to be my top options. Pulling up the Reds here in 2019. Some of these samples will be smaller because Moustakas missed time because he was sick earlier. So only 23 plate appearances. But, man, his batted ball numbers is always so fun. I adore that. Jesse Winker's hitting the ball harder this year. He's still not lofting the ball, so I don't view him as being like the highest upside guy. But he's still doing enough, and the results been great. He's batting third. So I would say take your pick of the Reds. And I think that's why they're my top stack of the night. Again, if you want to like if you want to get to Shane Bieber, I think that's the team that I would target first is going with the Reds because every batter I want to use in that team outside of Castellanos is super cheap, and it makes it really easy to afford them. I've got Moustakas in the utility slot. Ignore that. This is bad process, but whatever. It makes it easier for me. Let's go with Votto. I want Winker in there. And I'm going to go down to Akiyama because he is a lefty if my computer unfreezes, which it might not. Okay, there we go. Akiyama, $2,500. It's somehow still frozen. Okay, so the computer's still a little frozen here. So let's go to Justin over on Twitch. I have a Reds and Red Sox stack currently. Should have mentioned that at the beginning. Oh, sorry. So you probably do have you're probably at the max on the Reds. So I would go with Laureano then because he's in the Athletics, so he should avoid those stacks. If you can put another red in there, I would go with one of the Reds and just jam in another one because why not? But if you can't do that, I would go with Laureano as your other guy. Okay, so if we go with a four-man red stack and just load up on the lefties facing Wainwright, that leaves us at $2,950 left, and I think that you can make that work by going with the Red Sox. The problem is that most of the Red Sox we were looking at were outfielders. Now, if I take Moustakas out of utility like a dummy, and go over here and play him at second base, makes it a little bit easier because then you can put a couple of outfielders in there. You can put Verdugo and Martinez, maybe put Devers. We're not giving a full lineups. Definitely not going to do that because that's super shady. But I think that you can make it work. I think you can make a red stack work with Shane Bieber. I think the Reds are a good source for value. I think the Red Sox are another good source of value. So I think those would be the main places I would be looking when trying to identify ways to get up to Shane Bieber. Let's take this out here. I'm going to see what Rio Ruiz. $3,300. Okay, so all the time they lost money on Rio Ruiz last year, I guess has finally pushed his salary up. That is all the time that we have for today. Again, I think that today, I mentioned this on the solo shot this morning, today is a day where you pick your pitchers and then differentiate with your stacks. Try to give yourself multiple cracks here because every stack on this slate has a good chance of failing. So differentiate with your offenses, commit to your pitchers, and build around them. and give yourself the best chance to succeed should you happen to stumble into a good offense for tonight. It's a little bit different than usual, just differentiating more than I usually do with my offenses. That is all that we have for today. Back again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time to break down the Friday main slate. It is a dandy. We've got Aaron Nola on the first main slate on a weekday for a long time, might be the entire year, honestly. He's been disgusting. So we have to talk Aaron Nola tomorrow. That should be fun. Looking forward to that. That's at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page to get a notification right as we go live. We're also on Facebook and Twitch. Follow wherever you are watching us, and make sure you dive in with your questions as well. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for on the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. If you have any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Good luck with your DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A.